Pretty welcome. We'll just give it another minute or two while everybody comes in, then get started. Right, perfect. It's 12:01, so I'll go ahead and kick us off and um, get us started. So, good afternoon, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today. We're super excited to spend some time to share with you some of the different top secrets enterprise companies use in tracking some of their KPIs that directly impact their revenue growth, cash flow, and their procurement process. I'd like to introduce you to our panelists today. First, we have Evan Jarmal. Evan is an accomplished business and technology executive with over a decade of experience leading companies, people, processes, systems, and data a lot into competitive advantages. Prior to joining Omni as Vice President of Strategy and Operations, Evan was also Vice President for a global manufacturer where they doubled their manufacturing capacity. And previously, before that, he led a Salesforce consulting practice to double their revenue growth. His earlier digital transformation role saw him launch new revenue lines and streamline operations for clients in manufacturing, financial services, and life sciences. Thank you, Evan, for joining us today. We also have Kellen Bates. Kellen is the Vice President on the Accounts Receivables Finance Sales team at Raistone. He manages the Accounts Receivables Finance programs across a wide portfolio of clients and is responsible for onboarding both new clients and growing our existing relationships. Prior to joining Raistone, he served as the procurement agent at Boeing, where he managed relationships between raw materials suppliers and Boeing. While there, Kellen learned the importance of capital access for smaller suppliers working with large organizations utilizing extended payment terms. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Finance from Montana State University and has the very impressive CFA charter holder. And then myself as the moderator here, I serve as the Alliances Director at Raistone, overseeing partner acquisition and existing embedded finance partners, platform partners, referral partners, and private equity firms. My focus is ensuring partner success, driving the overall strategy and innovation of Raistone, bringing on-demand working capital to the clients we serve. Prior to joining Raistone, I was the partner development director at another fintech where I focused on building partnerships with embedded platforms, bank teams, private equity, investment bankers, and advisory and consulting firms. So thank you very much for allowing us to be here today. As we jump into some of our objectives, I think where we look to see is a lot of the companies, especially with the economic uncertainty we've seen from COVID to now, they're constantly looking for ways to drive revenue. If the sales team and lower cost for that matter as well. If the sales team gets a new contract, many of the small to mid-market businesses are limited by their access to capitalize to be able to purchase goods on those purchase orders and really taking that through the whole cash conversion cycle. So a lot of companies can be completely constrained with being out of pocket for anywhere from 3 to 6 months, sometimes longer. So we've outlined some strategies that enterprise companies use to maximize their working capital and manage their procurement process to foster rapid growth. Learning from experts in this space and implementing these strategies will enhance your operations, finances, and overall growth strategy. We are looking forward to sharing these insights with you today. So as we get started, I'd like to get a gauge of the audience, ensure we're speaking to the particulars of your industries and what's most important to you. So if you could please just take a quick minute to let us know what industry vertical you represent. Perfect. So do we have the results? Perfect. So a lot of food and pharmaceuticals here represented today. So that's super helpful for us to know because I know both those are um, with the FDA regulations and some of the different issues that you guys might serve. I think we'll make sure to touch on some of your industry particulars. So as we continue to move forward, I'm thrilled to represent the Raistone and Omni partnership to deliver results to both small and medium-sized businesses that we serve. We are better together because we help optimize your cash flow, improve lead times, and accelerate your revenue growth. And with that, I'm thrilled to hand this over to Evan and Kellen, who will be our key presenters for our time together.
Awesome. Thank you, Brittany. My name's Evan Jarmel. I appreciate everyone carving a half hour out of their lunch hour or their breakfast if you're on the Pacific Coast. We'll dive right into it. So what is the biggest challenge in the cash conversion cycle? Well, first, let's define it, make sure we're all on the same page. So the CCC measures how efficiently a company is at managing its working capital. The shorter your cash conversion is, the better your company is at selling its inventory and recovering cash from those sales while still paying your suppliers. CCC is a number that can be calculated. So how do we calculate it? We're going to work through this chart clockwise. DPO is the number of days on average it takes a company to pay its payables. Days payables outstanding. So that's issuing purchase orders, receiving them, and paying for them. DIO is the number of days on average it takes a company to sell its inventory. Days inventory outstanding. So from posted receipt to posted sales shipment. Days DSO, I think is probably most familiar for most people. Days sales outstanding. It's the number of days on average it takes a company to collect its receivables. We're talking about how long it takes your customers to pay their invoices. That's why most people pay attention to that one. A quick example, because it's a number we can calculate. Let's say, since we got a lot of food industry here, you're selling to very large retailers that pay you in 90 days or longer. So your DSO is 90 days. Let's say you're pretty good at getting raw material in the door, turning it into what you make and selling it. So we'll call DIO 15 days, 2 weeks. It's pretty good. And since you don't have the benefit of being a large company, you're probably paying your also smaller suppliers in 30 days. So that means your CCC is 75 days. It takes 75 days to turn your initial cash investment back into cash by selling it. So is that good? Well, if your competitors is 50, that means they have 2 weeks of working capital or cash on average before you do that they can put to work 2 weeks ahead of you. And the cycle repeats and the cycle repeats. So we'll move forward to the next slide and dive into it. Starting with procurement. Why does cycle time matter? When a manufacturer places a purchase order, the countdown on cash starts immediately. A wire transfer credit hold leaves the bank the same day, but that money won't return, as we just talked about, for months, a lot in the food industry. So first, the supplier's got to actually make your goods for you that you ordered. Then they got to ship it to you. Can get, is it going to go by truck? Is it going to get stuck in a port? Are you going across borders and have customs issues? Your finance team is going to keep refreshing the tracking links. Can't really do much more than that there. Once you finally get the goods, it's got to pass QC check, release it to production. You got to produce. Lots more quality checks involved there, generating your COAs. Ultimately, you make your finished product and move it to, very often in food, a 3PL or retailer's warehouse, depending on how your D2C channel's going. And so only after all of things happen, your customer buys it, does that cash start, and they have to pay the invoice, right? Does that cash start to come back? So count the calendar pages. That's how the loop can quickly expand out to 100 days. Every day trapped in that loop is working capital you can't deploy elsewhere. It's marketing you postpone, R&D you underfund, and safety stock you can't afford to produce. Worse, if you got some uncertainty in your forecasting, it might cause you to pad your forecast to have some extra on the shelf. You never want to stock out. If you have a stock out, the scramble kind of escalates, right? You might be expediting some air freight. booking some overtime labor, making a last minute supplier change because the one you had can't meet the need. And we're problem solving in this mindset in a reactive way. So it feels good, but in a different way is it's each one of those reactions that's escalating is adding cost and eroding margin. At the end of the day, you feel compelled to do it again because you want to get the order out the door, but we want to be smarter and we want to be proactive. Better that. Those long cycles also amplify risk. And pricing is an easy example for that. Like if you bought something for a cost you thought, and it's taken 90 days to sell it, if that cost goes up, have you updated your pricing? Like the length of the cycle kind of impedes your ability to be agile and respond to those types of events. So that's why cycle time is more than this accounting metric we started with in the first slide. It's the heartbeat of your business. Compressing the cycle increases your liquidity. If everything's working quicker and more efficient with smart processes, you can improve your forecasting. You can also give management a buffer against surprise events. Shorter cycles mean you can negotiate from strength. You can launch new SKUs with less fear and reinvest profit sooner. So as we move on to the next slide, keep that mental model in focus. Digitizing procurement to reduce delays. The surest way, how do we get started, right? The surest way to shorten the cash conversion cycle is to address the very first mile. It's like 101. So when does cash first leave your door? When you're creating a purchase order, how is it created, approved, sent, confirmed? In most companies, that process is quite manual. A planner might spot some low inventory, like physically in the warehouse, key it in from one system to another, generate a PDF, email it to the supplier. Supplier's going to read that PDF, send back a confirmation if everything's great. What if it's not? Price is wrong, quantity is wrong, trade some spreadsheets. I think everyone gets the point. And each one of those handoffs to quantify some things is definitely going to add hours, most likely days, got different time zones. And every manual entry in that process is inherently going to introduce more risk for error. And that cycle can be a nasty repeating one that probably will take weeks to sort out then if there's a conflict. So digitizing procurement can replace what I would call those non-value add tasks and speed up those various handoffs. So if everything is digital and in the system and the system's working well, right? The moment inventory dips below the threshold, the system can generate your POs for you. It knows what you need, how many, what price, and what required documentation has to come along with it. And then you can automatically deliver that without 7, 8, 9 manual more steps to your supplier. If you're working from that same common record, if there's any, and you have a nice, say, portal or a way to interface, your systems are integrated, you can fix anything that might be wrong also, like pricing changed. So we're going to make a point of AI. So it's everywhere right now. AI. Well, once purchase orders, receipts, historical consumption all live in that same data model, AI or not, your analytical tools that you do have or want to have can look for that seasonality, can look for drifting planned versus actual times in any part of that cycle, and can make recommendations based on what it is. A more precise reordering date, a different inventory, safety stock threshold, etc. The result is you carry less inventory without increasing the risk of a stock out, and you avoid last minute fire drills and air freight that erode your margin. Platforms such as Omni automate these steps, but the underlying principles are technology agnostic. You got to capture clean data at the source, keep every stakeholder on the same record, and then let our analytical tools refine the thresholds that we need, whether it be in material planning or cash management. Companies that adopt this approach consistently reclaim in the planning capacity, often a full week per month. And in the context of a purchaser, just pure purchaser, we've seen the productivity of one purchaser 4x. So 4 times as efficient for one person is pretty cool. On to the next slide. So at this point, I think we have what a best-in-class procure-to-pay process looks like. That's what I tried to illustrate to you. We're going to shift the same principles to the other side of the house, the orders to cash process. So once your finished goods clear and ship, that clock starts again, right? Your DSO. Traditional practice would be to wait for your payment terms to expire. all while your payroll, rent, and more material deposits keep draining your bank account. So I'm just really going to focus on the theme, digitally driven processes with high data integrity. What does that mean? Well, for a DSO example, it can mean in real time, your great digital processes are providing every data point they need to your customer, along with your invoice that lets them pay it. If there's any dispute, you have the data you need to stand up for yourself, or you have the data you need to investigate what went wrong and go and fix it without weeks of a quality investigation. Who loves a long CAPA? So aligning operations with liquidity turns the supply chain from a drag on cash into a generator of cash. Think about that. Goods move quickly because processes are digital. Money moves quickly because receivables are finance ready from day one, to hit those two earlier examples. So what have we seen? Well, when companies compare Omni's operational acceleration with Raistone's liquidity acceleration that Kellen's going to tell us about next, the change has been quite dramatic. A cash conversion cycle that once exceeded beyond 90 days, very common in this industry, compresses to fewer than 30. I mean, that's pretty huge. That effectively adds 2 extra turns of cash per year without raising capital or cutting costs elsewhere. And that freed up liquidity 2 weeks ahead of your competitor in our first CCC example can help fund new product launches, enter new markets, or simply provide a resilience buffer for the next supply shock. I'm sure everyone's supply chain was just perfect during COVID, and you didn't need any extra cash to solve any of those challenges. And that's enough for me. Again, I'm Evan Jarmel. You can contact me at evan@amni.ai. I would love to skip some engineering meetings to talk to you about how your business can be more efficient. And yeah, I appreciate everyone's ears. I'm going to pass the floor over to my friend Kellen with Raistone.
Yeah, thanks, Evan, and thank you for all that great info, and thanks, Brittany, for the introduction earlier. So the next part of our presentation is going to be about how you can leverage accounts receivable finance, or ARF for short, to help you with your cash conversion cycle. But first, we do have a second poll for everybody. So we did want to know, what is your biggest challenge to access working capital? So just take a few seconds here to answer, and then we'll get to the results. Okay, very interesting. Pretty widespread, but it looks like uncertain cash flow was the top return here. We will definitely touch on that throughout the rest of the presentation, but I do know we have some time at the end for some Q&A. So if anything's not covered, we can definitely jump into that and answer any and all questions. So yeah, let's get into the next slides. I'm going to be talking through how ARF fits within a business's stacked capital. And then I'm also going to go through a real life example of ARF in action. So to start here, it's important for us to detail how a business can raise capital across different layers, commonly referred to as the capital stack. Capital is typically raised through a mix of debt and equity. Each layer in the capital stack has distinct risk, return, and balance sheet impacts. So in this table, we've organized capital types from highest risk at the top, highest risk and pricing at the top, and then the lowest at the bottom. So this framing is helpful for decision makers as they can evaluate the trade-offs between control, costs, and leverage. So the equity portion, this is our highest risk, highest cost portion of the capital stack. Common equity here is the most expensive, highest risk, and its effect on the balance sheet is that it's dilutive to shareholders. So common stock is also last in line for repayment in an insolvency event, leading towards its high risk nature. Then we get to preferred equity. Preferred equity is slightly lower cost and risk than common stock, but it does have priority over common stock in insolvency. Preferred equity may also include dividends or redeemable terms, also kind of controlling for some of the risk aspect there. Then the debt portion of the capital stack here, debt is lower cost and non-dilutive to ownership, but debt does add liabilities to the balance sheet. So we've defined two types of debt here. There is subordinated or unsecured debt. This is debt that is not backed by assets and it's priced below equity, but it does add leverage to the balance sheet. Then we have senior secured debt. This is going to be your lowest cost capital as it's fully backed by assets and first in line for repayment. But companies oftentimes do have limits here. They can't raise an unlimited amount of senior secured debt. They have limits. So now that we've covered some of the basics on the traditional stack of the capital stack, I do want to talk about ARF and where it ultimately sits. But before we get to that, I do want to define what is ARF. So ARF is a working capital solution that provides immediate access to cash to businesses by advancing funds against their outstanding invoices to customer. So instead of waiting 30, 60, or 90 plus days to get paid, businesses can accelerate cash flow and reinvest in operations, growth, or anywhere else in the business. ARF just generates cash for you and you can kind of choose with what you want to do with it. So in this second slide here, we have slotted in where ARF sits in the capital stack. It sits right here in between unsecured junior debt and senior secured debt in terms when we're looking at it from a risk and cost perspective. ARF is structured as true sale, meaning that that the business is selling its receivable directly off its balance sheet to the funder, to the purchaser. And pricing is generally more competitive than unsecured debt because ARF is secured by the invoice itself and is repaid quickly once that customer pays. One of the biggest drivers of ARF price-wise is the credit quality of the customer. If the invoice you're sending is to an investment grade customer, pricing will definitely be more favorable to you as the seller. ARF is also non-dilutive and it's off balance sheet. So it improves liquidity without adding debt or affecting ownership. So for companies seeking working capital efficiency, ARF is a capital light, low impact solution. And can we hop to the next slide here, please? So I do want to talk through a real life example of ARF in action. And an ARF facility that we did provide to one of our clients here at Raistone. So here, just going to walk through a case study of a fast-growing coffee manufacturer that needed more working capital to meet rising demand and expand their market share. The challenge that this coffee manufacturer had was they had to make upfront payments to their suppliers, but they also had to contend with net 60 payment terms from their customer. So their cash conversion cycle, their CCC, was out of whack. The solution that Raistone provided was initially a $500,000 working capital ARF facility, which we later increased to $1 million facility. The flexible and scalable nature of ARF helped the business manage seasonality, and they were able to accelerate their cash flow as needed. I do think ARF can also be best displayed by looking at the timeline that we're displaying here, just of the cash conversion cycle, both before and after what we're looking at, standard cash conversion and then ARF cash conversion. So starting from the left here, at day 0, this is the first outflow where the coffee manufacturer were purchasing their raw materials. Then days 1 through 60, their production process. They were spending money on production, on distribution, on logistics, on personnel, so even more outflows for the business. Then day 60 is when they were finally able to invoice their customer after their production process. And looking at their standard or previous cash conversion cycle, day 61 through 120 was their accounts receivable period. So this is where they were waiting on the invoice to age to maturity as they were on those net 60 terms. Then day 120 is when that invoice was paid by the customer, and day 121 is finally when the funds were received in the account. So 0 to 121, that was their standard cash conversion cycle. Then when we implemented the ARF solution, the first 60 days remained the same. There was no impact on their operations, on their sourcing. The difference came once they invoiced their customer. And so this happened day 61, and where we go to the accounts receivable funding period. So day 61 through day 63 was when the invoice was approved by the customer, purchased by Raistone, and cash was sent by Raistone to the business. So 121 of cash conversion cycle to 63. I also wanted to highlight a few key benefits that directly outlined here, but the key benefits were certainly faster inflows. And as Evan was talking about, the utmost importance of day sales outstanding, DSO, it resulted in quicker receipt of cash, allowing the business to work with their preferred supplier and source the very best input for their coffee. The coffee manufacturer was also able to sell more. They were able to expand and capture new market share by working with a new customer with extended payment terms. Then also through working with Raistone, they were able to source a competitive rate on their ARF facility because their customer in this situation was an investment grade customer, and we were able to provide competitive rates in context of their capital stack, but then also just in general. So with ARF, the cash conversion cycle here went from 121 days to 63 days, so effectively cut it in half. The ARF we provided was a cost competitive solution that didn't dilute any existing ownership, or did it add leverage to the balance sheet. So that's going to wrap up my portion here. And as I mentioned, we do have Q&A, and we can open it up to the floor for questions, but do want to thank everybody for their time for attending today. And yeah, we can get into the Q&A here.
I think we have one from the audience right now. Where can I see my peers' industries cash conversion cycle to see where I compare? That's probably a question for you, Kellen.
Yeah, typically, I mean, I think you can probably source that type of information from common financial, information, like financial information sources. Certainly, if you reach out to Raistone, we can try to help you source that for you, so you can see if your current cash conversion cycle is competitive within the context of your competitors. So yeah, so I think that's something that Raistone can help out with, or maybe even just by a search on Google or any new AI tool. I think you can probably try to figure it out that way as well.
Just to point to one, I'm pretty sure APQC is a good resource for all of those metrics, but you might have to pay.
Perfect. And then I have one here for you, Evan. We're a smaller company with mostly paper-based processes. We know we can be more efficient. Where do we get started?
Where do we get started? It's probably one of my favorite questions. Well, you got to throw it right back. What's the biggest pain point? Are you frequently running out of raw material? Can't keep production on target? Do your customers need 2 or 3 or 4 separate things emailed to them in order to pay the invoice? And since we've got a lot of food people here, batch information, COAs, you got to make it easy. So yeah, I got to throw the question back, but I would get started on your biggest pain point, not a rocket science answer, but it really does start there, and then you have options. Remember the cycle, those 3 areas of your business. If everyone's paying their bills on time, great. Focus on planning. Production's always off target. Focus on production. So thanks.
Fantastic. And another one for Kellen. From an accounting standpoint, does selling receivables through Raistone qualify as a true sale off balance sheet treatment, or does it remain a secured borrowing?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question, and happy to talk through it. Kind of seemed like a 2-parter there. First, to touch on the secured borrowing aspect, it wouldn't be considered secured borrowing. We do structure our ARF facilities as standard as true sale, meaning that we are seeking to purchase the receivable directly from you off your balance sheet. Kind of look at the receivable as any asset. While it may be somewhat intangible, if you were to sell a building and realize cash, that would just be transacted off balance sheet. Same way with a receivable, you would be selling that receivable directly to the purchaser, to Raistone, and then we would be providing those cash proceeds. And it would not be a loan against the receivables as collateral. We don't structure it that way. It is as true sale, but that is a great question.
Perfect. Thank you, Kellen. With about one minute left here, we can quickly wrap it up. Evan, you mentioned AI-based planning tools. How much data is necessary to get reliable results from a model?
The more, the better. It's an easy answer. We'll say at least 6 months to get some value out of it. 5 years is better. But I think for a lot of people, especially in the smaller to middle markets, AI is the dream because marketers are great at marketing. But don't fear. You know where you need to get started. It's really good digital processes that are generating the data that tell the story of that item traveling all the way through your company. And the sooner you have more data being collected, the sooner you can put cool tools on it to come up with insights.
Awesome. But we had one last question, so we'll make it quick and then have you wrap it up, Kellen. How is the discount rate
Sure.
and invoice finance determined, and what credit criteria do you look at when approving mid-market food and beverage or pharmaceutical brands?
Yeah, so I know we had a lot of food and beverage. I think that was the top answer, but let's just say, like I mentioned, it's primarily debtor rating. That's the biggest driver of cost of the ARF facility. So if you're working with Coke, Pepsi, and they're your buyer, they're of course in great financial standing and would kind of drive to the lowest price. There are also some structural considerations on the ARF side, and I could talk your ear off about that. But essentially, I'll keep it simple. As we can control for the risk of the security of the receivable, as I mentioned, it would be secured against the invoice itself. So if the purchaser is in a priority position against that receivable, that is a good impact on pricing. But then also other kind of secondary items, like whether or not Coke or Pepsi are notified of the purchase. And then ultimately that when that invoice does age to maturity, if that can be collected directly by the purchaser. All of those kind of in the positive fashion would affect pricing and the credit quality of the ARF facility itself. But ultimately, if you are working with a grade A type purchaser customer, that would be the primary driver.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for your time today. We'll leave this up for a minute. So if you guys would like to reach out to anybody on the team to have any additional questions, feel free to jot down our email